Hip hop star, that's like thinking really, really crazy that he's gonna do that. He manifested that, came from Morocco, came and moved to New York, kept hustling and bustling, got on my radio.
You are welcome to another episode of HN What's Your Say? The #1 listening show where we discuss real issues with real people like you. Today we are featuring Shaun Diddy Combs, with a look into his ongoing trial against the federal government. You know, it's still unclear to any reasonable thinking person why in the world the federal government would imagine that grown adult male escorts, along with adult women and men who knowingly chose to indulge in what can only be described as wild crazy parties and nights of unfiltered, consensual sexual frenzy would have to be somehow influenced, manipulated, or coerced by another adult before they could decide whether or not to participate. It's not only unclear. It's an outright joke to imagine such a thing. When you pause for a second and really think about it, this whole narrative falls apart on its face. Are we really being told that grown men and women, people of legal age, people with their own autonomy, people capable of making their own decisions about what they do and who they do it with somehow became powerless and unable to think for themselves the moment they walked into a party? Are we really to believe that these adults, some of whom were paid escorts, professional party promoters and organizers of these events needed to be influenced or directed by Diddy or anyone else before making their own choices? It's not even a credible argument to hold. It completely insults the intelligence of the public, it undermines the agency and independence of those very adults, and frankly, it exposes just how desperate the government's case has become. Because at the end of the day, no one forced these people to show up. No one forced them to participate. No one forced them to drink, to get high, or to engage in sexual acts at these parties. These were grown men and women making conscious, willful and deliberate decisions to attend, to partake, and in many cases, to even help organize these so-called freak-off parties. Now, to make matters even worse for the government's already shaky and paper-thin case, several of these supposed participants, people who are now conveniently claiming victimhood because it serves a financial or legal purpose, have come out and confessed with their own mouths that not only were they willing participants, but in some cases, they were the very organizers of these events. And no example highlights this better than Cassie Ventura. Because while she now stands in front of cameras and courtrooms trying to rewrite history as a helpless victim, the very same Cassie has previously confessed to organizing these events, to coordinating the hiring of male escorts, to making logistical arrangements and essentially setting the entire stage for these parties to unfold exactly the way they eventually did. So let's unpack this for a moment. How is it possible? How can the world be expected to accept that the very people who organized these events, who made calls, sent invitations, hired personnel, booked venues, arranged for alcohol, drugs and male escorts as well as entertainment, can now turn around and pretend to be powerless victims of the same scenarios they themselves designed? How can someone orchestrate an event, invite others to it including male escorts, sleep with the male escorts in front of everybody else, and then claim to be traumatized by its outcome? It doesn't make any logical sense. And quite frankly, it reveals the sheer hypocrisy and opportunism at play here. Because when you voluntarily create a situation, when you actively participate in and benefit from a certain environment, you don't get to claim victimhood when it no longer suits you or when a financial incentive presents itself down the road. And this is the fundamental flaw in the government's case. The moment Cassie confessed that she was the one organizing and paying for male escorts, the government narrative collapsed. It rendered the entire argument self-defeating. Because if the so-called victim was actually the architect of these so-called abusive environments, then who exactly is supposed to be held responsible? Who is supposed to bear the blame? Diddy? For showing up to a party that someone else organized? For participating in consensual adult activities that no one was forced to take part in? Let's be very clear here, accountability doesn't work that way. Responsibility doesn't work that way either. The law doesn't work that way, or at least it shouldn't. And society certainly shouldn't allow itself to be manipulated by these backward narratives, especially when the facts, the timelines and the confessions all contradict the story being sold to the public. What we're witnessing is a classic case of selective accountability. And it begs the question, Why should it be Diddy who takes the fall for the actions of other adult men and women? Why should the burden of responsibility be placed on one man's shoulders when every single participant in those events was an adult capable of making their own decisions? Is it because he's a billionaire? Is it because he's successful? Is it because people see an opportunity to attach his name to headlines and lawsuits for attention, clout, or a payout? Because if we're being honest, and we should be, that's exactly what this looks like. It's a carefully coordinated money-motivated scheme disguised as a moral crusade. It's a calculated attempt to tear down a high-profile public figure by conveniently turning former friends, associates and collaborators into alleged victims long after the fact, and only when it became fashionable or financially advantageous to do so. And it's important to recognize how dangerous this is, not just for Diddy, but for the principle of fairness in society as a whole. If we accept this kind of logic that people can throw wild parties, engage in consensual adult behavior, participate in explicit activities, and then years later decide to claim victimhood when it suits them, then we're opening a door that none of us should be comfortable with. We're essentially saying that personal agency no longer matters. That adults can no longer be held accountable for their own decisions. That someone's wealth, success, or public standing can be weaponized against them in hindsight based on situations where no laws were broken, no one was coerced, and everyone involved participated willingly if not eagerly. It's worth repeating, these were adults. These were men and women of legal age. Some of them were male escorts whose entire profession revolves around being hired for private entertainment. Some were professional party organizers, promoters, or celebrities who made careers out of navigating these exclusive social circles. These weren't naive children, nor were they unsuspecting victims lured into something they didn't understand. They knew exactly what they were doing, and in many cases profited from it. And yet now, after the parties are over, after the lights have dimmed, and after the money has been spent, we're expected to believe that these very same people were helpless, unwilling participants in scenarios they themselves designed and facilitated. It's not credible. It's not fair, and it's certainly not justice. If the government wants to pursue real accountability, they need to begin by respecting the concept of personal responsibility. They need to stop weaponizing the legal system to settle personal scores or to provide convenient payouts for opportunists masquerading as victims. They need to recognize that not every salacious headline warrants federal intervention, and that not every adult who makes regrettable decisions deserves a multi-million-dollar sympathy check at the expense of someone else's freedom or reputation. And for the public, it's time we stop allowing ourselves to be manipulated by one-sided narratives pushed by opportunistic media outlets and legal teams looking to make a name for themselves. We owe it to ourselves to ask the difficult questions, to examine the facts objectively, and to reject these hollow performative victim stories when the evidence and even the confessions of the so-called victims tell a very different story. Because at the end of the day, if we allow this kind of thing to stand, if we let people claim victimhood for situations they themselves orchestrated, then no one is safe. No celebrity, no public figure, no everyday person is safe. We will have created a culture where facts no longer matter, where personal responsibility is obsolete, and where anyone with enough audacity and a good lawyer can rewrite history to their advantage. And that is a road none of us should be willing to travel. That is all we had for you today on HN What's Your Say? To keep updated whenever we post a new video, subscribe to this channel now. Also remember to hit the bell icon and enable notifications. And feel free to share your opinions with us in the comment section below, and let us know if you would like us to publish your views in our next release. We value all our subscribers' opinions.